All right, Mr. Tan. Some noise on Mr. Chi Ling. So I have a very... All right, so Madam.
Thanks, everyone. I know this is after a very rushed lunch, so I'm going to try and make this as easy as possible to digest together with your dessert and your coffee. Thank you, fellow panelists, for joining us today. I wanted to start off with some facts about our digital economy. So right now, the digital economy contributes about 15% to Malaysia's GDP, and it's estimated that it will grow to about a quarter of our GDP in the next 3 years. So that's quite a bit, right? And 90% of Malaysia's digital economy right now is made up of e-commerce and fintech, but we expect it to grow to encompass all economic and business activities that involve the production and use of digital tech by individuals, businesses, and governments. So what does that mean? That includes queuing up for a digital queue for your Coldplay tickets this morning, perhaps. So that's why this panel is important. Okay, so starting off, I want to show this index that you see on the screen right now. So Knight Frank came up with this C5, Southeast Asia 5 Data Center Opportunity Index, which looks at the Tier 2 markets for data centers in Southeast Asia. And Malaysia has come out quite favorably in this index, predominantly because we had a high take-up rate in 2022. And also, of course, we had a very high GDP growth last year, so that factored into the index as well. This was a fourfold increase over the next highest market, which was Thailand, which also had a very respectable 25 megawatts take-up. But it would seem that Malaysia has quite good prospects moving ahead, and that's why we're here. Okay. Let's start with Zeeming. The world is becoming increasingly digital. So how would you describe the current state of data centers and cloud infrastructure in Malaysia? Does it sufficiently power Malaysia's digital economy, like the purchase of Coldplay tickets, and the transformation that we are going through?
All right. Thanks, Amy. All right, this is, okay, I get the first question after lunch. That's a good one. All right, okay, so if you can see from the chart there, we are at 113 megawatts uptake in 2022. We are coming from a small base, right? And prior to that, prior to 2020, I think if you add up all the commercial data centers in Malaysia, you'll be less than 100 megawatts. So this represents a doubling. So that's an interesting number, it's doubled. Now, okay, is it enough and how much more do we need? I like to use a metric that the World Bank uses. The World Bank has a metric for digital adoption. It's called the number of secure servers per million population, right? Now, a secure server is a server where you conduct any kind of secure transmission. That means when you do any kind of e-commerce transaction or online banking transaction or even your social media, you are talking to a secure server somewhere, right? Especially when you see HTTPS on your URL, you are talking to a secure server. So what does it mean when Malaysia, as of 2020, Malaysia had 7,500 secure servers per million population, okay? To put that in context, the United States has 140,000 secure servers per million population, and Singapore has 130,000 secure servers per million population. So Malaysia is at least an order of magnitude behind Singapore, which means we need to grow our data center industry an order of magnitude in order to come to parity with Singapore. So I think that's a good measure of where we are now and where we need to be.
Right. Seems like a lot of upside, a lot of catching up to do.
Yes.
Which then brings us to the next question. Justin, data centers. They are often referred to as the central nervous system of the global digital economy. So could you explain this concept and elaborate on how data centers play a critical role in enabling the seamless flow of digital data?
Okay. Thank you, Amy. So I think basically the concept of central nervous system, I think is absolutely spot on. Okay. So basically data centers serve as a backbone of new modern infrastructures. It provides resources and infrastructures that to store, to process and distribute vast amount of data. Okay, it also serves as a centralized hub for organizations and individual, basically to manage and store their digital assets as well as application and services. So similar to our human body, basically we have central nervous systems. Data centers also basically you ensure the smooth and also the uninterrupted transmission of the data and digital informations. So basically, data center plays a couple of key factors over here. Number one, basically data centers provide processing power, and especially for nowadays, there are more. Basically, the demand for processing is getting higher. Okay, data center houses a lot of us, basically high performance kind of servers. This is enable basically for the providers like the cloud providers to offer the service like advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, machine language, and also those new upcoming kind of technologies that needed to be housed in data centers. Then secondly, they also provide storage and data, basically the data accessibility. So basically, if you look at from a cloud perspective, cloud offer different kinds of storage, whereas you have a block, basically object storage, block storage, file storage, and this allows the users and the organizations to access them anywhere, anytime. Okay, aside from that, I mean, connectivity is another important one. And then we'll be talking about the redundancy and also the resiliency. And lastly, of course, the security and data protection. This is where these are the key aspects that data center will be able to provide. Thank you.
Right. Thanks. Thanks, Justin. That's quite comprehensive. And moving on from that, when we look at designing data centers, Wei Hao. So what are the key considerations in terms of infra, layout, security in order to ensure performance and reliability of data centers?
Yeah, there's many aspects when it comes to designing a data center because it's so critical. Off the top of my head, number one would be the locations really. It's typically people who design or pick a data center would be away from hazardous kind of or high risk kind of area. So things like away from the flight path, away from storage facility with hazardous material, oil and gas processing plant, things like that. In Malaysia, specifically we're sensitive to flood. So always have to be careful that the site that we pick at least has to be, if we have the data to support above the 50 years, floodplain, or if not, then we purposely will want the building to be built on a platform that's elevated. So that will at least give us some comfort of security that it won't hit us. So that's on the site perspective. Next to it will be availability and reliability of utility supply, power, water, and connectivity, right? So thank God in Malaysia, I think from power-wise, TNB has been very good. Almost I think since for the past few years, the what I call it availability percentage has been close to 100%, right? I think we had one incident late last year, in Yongpeng somewhere, but it has been consistently providing that kind of high reliable power supply to us. Selangor State, as we all know, there's water has always been an issue. There's always disruption here and there. So that is something that people would think about. So other places of Malaysia probably provide a better alternatives, could be to build data centers. Next, perhaps on the availability of the design. Now come to the building itself. So typically, DCs follow the two major authority body of availability in the world, TIA 942 and Uptime Institute. So all good thing is both also uses a 4-level rating system, so it doesn't confuse anybody else. So starting from the lowest tier, which is the most basic rated one, all the way to fault tolerant levels, tier 4 or rated 4. Most customers would just good enough with a rated 3, which meant for concurrently maintainable. Concurrently maintainable meaning in case you need to do some plain maintenance of the facility itself, so your server will not be affected. So the operator has options to shut down certain parts of the data center, but it doesn't affect the load or the cooling into the servers. So most of the commercial DC out there, they go with tier 3 or rated 3 setup. In terms of perimeter security, that is another area, right, that we take into considerations. No, you wouldn't see like a prison kind of setup perimeter kind of security, but we do a bit more high tech, right? So we do like the anti-climbing fence, we run fiber cables, we call the fence intrusion detection systems along the perimeter. So in case of any wire cutler or certain pressure against the fence, so our command center actually picked that up. So we can actually zoom into CCTV, and all that to analyze what's happening and all that. So those are some of the must-have. Or I think typically for any customer who come in to shop for the DC, they will go through this whole list of checklists and all that, right?
Thanks, Wei Hao. So it's about location, it's about energy availability, which
Yep.
Malaysia pretty much has.
Very good.
It's also about how the data center is designed, as well as perimeter security, right? Thank you very much, Wei Hao. That's about how to design a good data center. And then moving on, Ziming, let me come to you about the challenges. What are the challenges in the market right now, in the data center market in Malaysia?
Okay. I think let's settle the power issue first, right?
Okay.
In general, Malaysia does not have a shortage of power. In fact, we have more power than we can. Even looking at the projected growth of a data center industry in the next 10, 15 years, TNB has us covered, no problems. So TNB says we have enough power. The issue now is, where do you need that power and how quickly you need it, right? This is where the challenge is. Now, if you look at the data center industry, they tend to cluster together. So the clusters are now in southern Johor and around Klang Valley, around Cyberjaya especially. So now when you have a lot of large-scale data centers all coming to one place and all asking for hundreds of megawatts of power, then the challenge is, how do we get enough power to those focus zones in a timely manner? Building power infrastructure takes time. So this is one of the things that MDEC does, is we help companies engage with the Tenaga Nasional in order to ensure that you get the power in a timely manner. So that's one challenge. So that's not it's not a shortage problem, it's about distribution of the power. The other thing that we need a lot more of is optical fiber. In the past, right, a typical telco, TM time and on, when they deploy fiber, it is for their own needs. It's about providing bandwidth and connectivity to the customers. But today, what we are seeing is these hyperscale data centers coming in. They want hundreds of cores of fiber. And what is typically put in the ground for telecommunications requirements does not meet that capacity. Because we can have one data center taking up an entire fiber, 144 cores in a fiber cable. So the service providers now need to put thousands of cores of fiber in the ground in order to meet the demand of the hyperscale data centers. So this is where what I would think is one of the biggest challenges today.
So it's about power and fiber. Okay. Right. So, as we come from challenges, we are all here because Malaysia is positioning ourselves as an international hub. So, Chi-Ling, we want to position ourselves as a regional data center hub, right? And what kind of unique advantages does Malaysia offer? Or perhaps from your perspective, since you are from Singapore, what is Singapore doing well that Malaysia can emulate?
Thanks, Amy. So, demand for digital infrastructure is rising in Malaysia, right? Especially with the rollout of 5G is coming to its full deployment. There will be more data being transmitted and that required to be stored, and this is where data centers comes in, right? With that, Malaysia will be a net beneficiary for its proximity to Singapore and its decision to put a hold on construction of data centers. Yep. Due to energy and sustainability issues with Singapore, right? So Malaysia will benefit from this. Not just Singapore, but amongst other tier 1 countries in the region, in the APEC region, they are facing pressures, right? In prices are going up very high. Lack of availability of land in the right areas, costs of building data centers are going up. And most importantly, Ximing has touched on it, power availability. A lot of countries, there is a lack of power generation and distribution. Yeah, and the lead time for power in some of those tier 1 markets are up to 8 years in certain cases. So what are the advantages for Malaysia? Firstly, the development cost in Malaysia is generally lower, and has been touched upon by my panelists here. Power is readily available in Malaysia and of high availability as well, and at a very good cost, which is very important. Secondly, the pandemic, right? The pandemic has caused exponential growth in digital transformation and the adoption of cloud, which has given the cloud players a nascent growth market to come into. And thirdly, the government of Malaysia, they're doing a very good job in their policies, to be able to attract investments into the country. So these are some of the advantages for Malaysia. With that said, what we are seeing is the immense growth of data centers in Malaysia are in two key areas, Johor and KL, right? There is research right now by Structured Research saying that there's something like 800 megawatts of installed capacity in Johor. Keep in mind, there's only about 600 megawatts of capacity currently in Singapore. So the growth is very exponential and crazy, and this is something we need to watch out for. There is potential headwinds, but with that said, we are very bullish on Malaysia right now.
Right. So it's our good luck to be next to Singapore.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So moving on to something more social, perhaps. Wei Hao, can you provide? We are talking about data centers, and in today's maybe ESG market, we want to talk about the society, social, right? So how do data centers contribute to growth, innovation, scalability of today's businesses? And can you provide maybe some specific examples of how businesses have leveraged data centers to tackle complex society challenges?
Okay.
I know Grab is one.
I think transforming business digitally is inevitable. Everybody knows that. There's a need to go there. Partly because commoditizations of technology are already happening since the start of the first smartphone. Right? Everybody holds. In the 80s or 90s, Microsoft said that every home will have a PC, but now everybody is holding one, maybe a device. Yes, all right. So that provide business an opportunity to build a lot of this solution on top. Right? Data centers may be too far back that the consumer will not see. They're seeing the apps, they're seeing the flexibility to deal with the business as they go. 24/7, any time of the day, any place of whenever they are. So on a personal level, you talk about society challenges and all that. There are many examples out there. And one would be the digital banking, fintech kind of area. We have micro SMEs, hawkers and all that who needs the kind of loans that banks cannot dish out to them because they're not qualified for it. But these days, they can onboard to the fintech solutions provider, don't even need to set up a branch. They just download the app, enroll them as a customers, and voila, they get, the needed fund for them to roll their business on a month-to-month basis. So this itself is really fastened the solutions in terms of funding and all that. I think one of the 9 areas that the government is trying to push in, a lot of them is on digital financing, Islamic financing, and so on and so forth, which is on the right path. Yeah.
Making money virtual. Huh? Okay. So yes, from financing, let's move on to Ziming. What role do government policies and regulations play in the development of DCs in Malaysia?
Actually, that's a very loaded question. There are a lot of things. Okay.
That's what it's meant to be.
I can talk for 1 hour on this topic, so let's not go everywhere.
3 minutes.
I have 3 minutes. Okay. All right. Let's pick one. Energy policy is one. What we would like to see is renewable energy be more readily available for data center companies. And so this is one very, very important policy. So right now, under the Malaysian energy laws, data centers cannot buy renewable energy directly from the producers, right? You need to buy it through TNB. Okay. But the government is actually now reviewing that, and hopefully before the end of this year, which the ministry has announced, what they call third-party access. Third-party access allows a data center company to buy directly from energy producer under a virtual PPA, a virtual power purchase agreement.
Yay to the government.
Yes, yes, that's a very important policy. So that's an example. Another example is we would like to see more submarine cables landing in Malaysia, right? Because where you have hyperscale data centers, you need the commensurate amount of connectivity to come into Malaysia. So in order to do that, we need to have policies that are friendly to submarine cable operators to enable them to repair their cables as quickly and efficiently as possible. So the policies to enable that to happen must be in place as well. So I think those are the 2 examples I'll use. Otherwise, it can get long.
Thank you. That was a good 3 minutes. And definitely very loaded. So submarine cables. Okay. So Justin, maybe I come back to you about the digital landscape constantly evolving. So what trends or developments do you foresee in the future? We're looking at the crystal ball now. What do you think will further enhance the role and importance of cloud infra in powering the digital world that we will be living in, or the virtual world that we'll be living in?
Okay, thanks, Amy. So basically, based on a research, our global data sizes will be reaching approximately 180 zettabyte in year 2025. Basically, this is actually a humongous kind of data that you are looking at. So basically, why? First thing is why there are so many data being created. So the reason is one of the reasons is because of our digitalization process and also our transformations. Yeah. And how are we going to deal with this? And DCCI, basically data centers and cloud infrastructures, will be one of the answers to it. Okay. So basically, let's go to the trend. And what the trend will be upcoming in the next couple of years. Personally, I think that basically 5G, the rapid rollout of 5G, is playing a very crucial role. So based on the research, at the moment, I think in the next couple of 5 years, right, there will be 6 million base stations will be installed worldwide, and 5G coverage will reach up to 50% of the world populations in the next 5 years. And this actually plays a very crucial role where basically, these 5Gs are actually, famous with a capability of lower latency, and you bring higher bandwidth and also a better user experience. This will actually help the technology to actually to develop more technology which is related and also bring on the digitalizations. And what kind of technology can be benefits? Probably we can talk about V2E, vehicle to everything. This is where the vehicles and the people and also the urban infrastructures can be interconnected. Yep. Aside from that, there will be AR, VR. Okay, and also there will be more AI related kind of those applications will be launched in the near futures. All right. Thank you.
It all sounds like we should have a lot more power, and TNB should actually be sitting on this panel as well. So, from the power perspective, Wei Hao, can I come to you with a question about sustainability? If we were to look at how DCCI is evolving in Malaysia and the changing needs of businesses and the immense hunger for power, with the increased emphasis of all organizations on ESG, on sustainability and environment, how do you see data centers moving forward?
I think Justin just now brought up about AI and all that. So definitely the power consumptions by DC will not just stop, we just keep on growing. Well, maybe DC is not among the top power hunger industry out there. There are a lot more other, talking about press metal, oil and gas, chemical, those type, they use a lot more power, right? Also depending on the country. The reason why I think Singapore stopped, have the moratorium is that because of the concentrations of digital services over there, I think year 2020, it kind of spiked up to about 7 or 6% of the total country power consumption. So the government kind of like, you gotta put a stop to it. Malaysia is still pretty much like 1% like that, still okay. So, but having said that, yes, sustainable definitely will be a main agenda, partly driven by Bursa, going down to all the companies to do ESG reporting, things like the climate-related risks for financial disclosure, for example. Banks will now have to evaluate loans. If this loan is going out for that company to go and mine more coal or use more coal, no, they're going to stop dispersing that loan. They're going to give that loan to another organization to do something that's good for the earth or renewable and all that. So coming from an operator, TM1, to host some of these banking customers, indirectly, they will look at us as well. On a scope 2 area, whether we are doing our part to be sustainable, whether we are running their IT backend with clean energy. So it is going to be a big major agenda. And I think Schneider Electric recently just rolled out a new framework to look at DC operations to be more sustainable in a very structured, metric-driven way. So I don't know, maybe not, Bursa may not go until that way, but some of our international customer, when they float out an RFP or tender, they may list it down in their requirement already, that we must disclose, how much is our carbon footprint and things like that. So that will indirectly move the entire industries and the operators to be really sustainable, way to operate it.
Right, Wei Hao, thank you. Thank you for sharing your crystal ball.
Thank you.
And now, Chi Ling, your crystal ball is next. Looking ahead, what trends and innovations do you think that you'll see in the DCCI space in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. All right, thanks. So I think I want to touch on some of what my panelists here have talked about, right? And they kind of mentioned power and how we need more power. And sometimes data centers, they do get a bad rap, right? As in they consume too much power. I give you some statistics here. You know, in last year, more data was generated, right, than all the previous years added up together. You know, so our dependency on data is ever increasing, right? But that doesn't mean that we're just wasting all the energies, right? In 2001, 1 petaflop of compute, right, will take about 20 megawatts of power and about 30,000 square meters of space for the data center. In 2014, the 1 petaflop came to about 1 megawatt of power and about 1,000 square meters. Now, in about 2021, 2022, that went down to 150 to 250 kilowatts and about a few rack space. So, although we are generating more power, more data, we are using more power. You know, we are also doing it a lot more efficiently. It's just that that growth is just exponential and growing, you know, super crazy, right? So that's why, you know, it seems like we're using a lot of power, but we are doing it in a more responsible way as well. And then another trend that we're seeing, you know, the data-centric, the city-centric data centers like the AIMS that used to be in the CBD area, they're gonna move out to the outer edges so that, you know, we can build those larger data centers with bigger power, right? And you're starting to see the 200 megawatts, 500 megawatt type of data centers. And lastly, I think power utilization, where in 2001, it used to be 1 to 2 kilowatts per rack. 2008, 2010, you know, it moved up to 4 kilowatts per rack. You know, you're looking at about 8 kilowatts now. But we are actually seeing trends of going up to 25 kilowatts per rack and even 40 kilowatts per rack from our customers now. So this is where we see some of the technology moving. And of course, I think the IT architecture will move as well with that.
It's interesting. Thank you for sharing your crystal ball. And I think I've come to my last question to wrap up the panel session. It's not technical, so don't worry. So the question is, in one word, yeah, if data centers or cloud infra were superheroes, what superpowers would they possess to save the day in the digital world? One word. Ziming, can we start with you?
Protection.
Protection, okay? Thank you. Chilling.
Green, energy efficiency.
Efficiency.
Okay. Efficiency is a superpower.
Reliability.
Oh, yes, definitely a superpower. Thank you very much, panelists. This has been a great panel. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
All right, thank you very much, Miss Amy Wong, for moderating this session. The Senior Business Consulting TM1. That feels good! All right, thank you so much. And